What if I told you that the Iran war everyone fears has already begun, and there is no exit strategy because there was never supposed to be one? This is not speculation about future conflicts or military escalation. This is arithmetic. The structural forces that make this confrontation inevitable have been building for decades, following patterns so predictable that if you understand the framework, the outcome becomes clear. I'm Professor Heinrich Voss, and today we're examining why the Iran crisis represents something far more dangerous than a regional conflict. It's a hegemonic relay in motion, where the current global order transfers power not through victory, but through exhaustion. The evidence suggests we're witnessing the convergence of multiple cyclical patterns. Iran's proxy network has expanded across 7 countries. Global debt GDP ratios have exceeded 350%, surpassing pre-2008 levels. And most critically, the demographic clock is ticking, not just for Iran, but for every major power attempting to contain it. Through my cyclical realism framework, this confrontation was always scheduled to arrive. Today, we'll examine how the hegemonic relay pillar explains why this conflict has no traditional exit, because exits require someone capable of enforcing them, and that capability is precisely what's being contested. The hegemonic relay operates on a simple principle. Global leadership doesn't transfer through conquest. It transfers through incumbent exhaustion. The challenger rarely wins outright. Instead, a third party inherits the system once both primary contestants have depleted themselves. Let's examine the structural dynamics. The United States has been the global hegemon for 80 years, but the arithmetic of empire is unforgiving. Since 2001, America has spent over $8 trillion on Middle Eastern interventions, roughly equivalent to the entire GDP of Japan. Meanwhile, Iran has achieved strategic objectives across the region, spending perhaps 2% of that amount through proxy networks. This asymmetry is not accidental. It's the mathematical signature of hegemonic transition. The incumbent power must maintain global commitments, while the challenger only needs to disrupt them. Iran doesn't need to defeat the U.S. Navy. It only needs to make the cost of maintaining naval supremacy exceed America's willingness to pay. Consider the current situation. Iran's proxy network spans from Yemen to Lebanon, controlling or threatening every major choke point between Asia and Europe. Over 80% of global semiconductor production passes through waters that Iran can now credibly threaten. This is not military strategy. This is economic leverage through geographic positioning. The historical parallel is precise. The Suez Crisis of 1956, Britain and France possessed overwhelming military superiority over Egypt. They could seize the canal, and they did. But they couldn't afford to hold it indefinitely while managing global commitments elsewhere. The United States, not yet ready to assume full hegemonic responsibility, forced their withdrawal. The result? Britain's imperial pretensions died at Suez, but America wasn't ready to fill the vacuum completely. Today's pattern is identical, but more complex. The United States maintains overwhelming conventional superiority over Iran. It could devastate Iranian military capabilities, but it cannot afford to occupy and rebuild Iran while managing commitments in Europe, the Pacific, and maintaining domestic stability with a national debt approaching $35 trillion. Here's where the arithmetic becomes decisive. Iran's fertility rate has collapsed to 1.7 children per woman, among the fastest demographic transitions in recorded history. This creates a perverse strategic advantage. A society with fewer young people has less to lose in asymmetric confrontation. Iran's leadership can accept casualties that would topple governments in aging, risk-averse societies. But the deeper pattern is that hegemonic relays require three actors: the exhausted incumbent, the disruptive challenger, and the inheriting bystander. In 1956, that was Britain, Egypt, and America. Today, it's America, Iran, and China. China doesn't need Iran to defeat America. It needs America and Iran to exhaust each other. Every dollar spent on Middle Eastern containment is a dollar not spent on Pacific deterrence. Every carrier group in the Persian Gulf is a carrier group not available for Taiwan contingencies. The map never lies. Iran sits at the geographic crossroads between Asia and Europe, controlling access to 40% of global oil exports. Geography doesn't care about your ideology. It only cares about choke points and the ability to close them. This is why there's no exit strategy. An exit implies the ability to leave on your terms, having achieved your objectives. But in a hegemonic relay, the objective isn't victory. It's avoiding exhaustion while your competitor depletes themselves. Iran's strategy isn't to win. It's to ensure America can't afford to keep playing. The evidence suggests this dynamic is already operational. American military planners estimate that a full-scale Iran conflict would require 1.5 million troops and cost $3.5 trillion over a decade. Those numbers aren't sustainable for a country with existing debt obligations exceeding 120% of GDP. Meanwhile, Iran's proxy model scales efficiently. Training and equipping Houthi naval units costs perhaps $50 million annually. The economic disruption they create in Red Sea shipping exceeds $200 billion per year. This is asymmetric return on investment that no conventional military can match. History doesn't repeat, but it does send calendar invites. The pattern indicates we're entering the exhaustion phase of American hegemony, not through military defeat, but through financial mathematics and strategic overstretch. The hegemonic relay pillar reveals why the Iran confrontation has no traditional exit, because it was never designed to have one. This is a structural transition disguised as a regional conflict. The feedback loops are already visible. Iranian proxy actions force American responses, which drain American resources, which reduce American deterrent capability elsewhere, which encourages Iranian escalation. Each cycle increases the cost of maintaining the status quo while decreasing the ability to pay those costs. The demographic element amplifies this pattern. Iran's collapsing birth rate creates a generation with diminished future orientation, precisely the demographic profile that accepts higher strategic risks. Meanwhile, America's aging population demands increased social spending at exactly the moment when military commitments are expanding. The geographic trap ensures this cycle continues. Iran cannot be bypassed. It controls too many critical choke points. America cannot withdraw. The economic consequences of losing Middle Eastern energy access would trigger domestic political collapse. China cannot intervene directly, but it doesn't need to, as long as the other two powers exhaust themselves. History doesn't repeat, but it does send calendar invites. The pattern predicts that within 5 to 10 years, either America accepts a significantly reduced Middle Eastern role, or it faces the choice between fiscal crisis and military overstretch. Iran doesn't need to win this confrontation. It only needs America to lose the ability to sustain it. The arithmetic is unforgiving. Superpowers don't collapse from external conquest. They collapse from the mathematics of imperial overstretch meeting demographic decline, meeting fiscal reality. So, let me return to where we began. The Iran war has no exit because there was never supposed to be one. This is a hegemonic relay in motion, where the objective isn't victory, but strategic exhaustion of the incumbent power. The final implication for the global order is profound. We're not watching a regional crisis. we're watching the scheduled transition of global leadership, following patterns as predictable as demographic trends or debt cycles. The challenger doesn't need to defeat the hegemon. Time and mathematics will do that work. Geography doesn't care about your ideology. It only cares about choke points, demographics, and the ability to pay for global commitments indefinitely. The evidence suggests that ability is approaching its mathematical limits. If this analysis challenges your assumptions about current events, that's the point. Cyclical realism doesn't predict what we want to happen. It predicts what the structural forces make inevitable. Subscribe for more systematic analysis of the patterns shaping our world, and let me know in the comments. Which historical parallel do you think best explains our current moment? The map never lies, but it does require careful reading.